Against the Flow. Reading ambassador Ben Brown is brimming with ideas to help reverse children's disturbing drift away from books. By Claire Delore. Photographed by Claire Delore. Colorful by name, nature, appearance and language, poet and writer Ben Brown, Ngati Mahuta, Ngati Koroki, Ngati Paoa is an inspired choice as New Zealand's inaugural reading ambassador. With his former wife, illustrator Helen Taylor, Brown won the 2006 Best Picture Book and the New Zealand Post Children's Books Awards for A Booming in the Night. He has written non-fiction and short stories for adults and children, as well as editing a book called How the F Did I Get Here?, a result of his work with young offenders. He loves both writing and reading books, and it's hard to imagine children failing to be captured by his enthusiasm and energy and his sometimes unorthodox approach. Brown reports to a range of government departments and agencies, and 5 months into his 2-year appointment, is keen to get some runs on the board. Asked how it's going, he throws back his head and laughs before declaring, "It has been a learning experience." In announcing the appointment, Internal Affairs Minister Jan Tinetti said Brown was a great person to inspire tamariki and whānau, and to promote the importance of reading. She cited OECD statistics showing a marked decline in reading for pleasure. Nearly half our 15-year-olds never read for enjoyment. Despite the bureaucracy he is learning to navigate, Brown is relishing his role. He knows from experience, growing up on a tobacco farm in Motueka, that it can take just one determined person to get a child to pick up a book. In his case, it was his father, Gordon, an Australian from the Northern Territory who emigrated to New Zealand and fell in love with Turia Rahe, known as Julia. She had connections to Maori royalty. Her father's house was second home to some of the mokopuna from the house of the 5th Maori king, Koroki Mahuta. Among the children was Bob, later Sir Robert Mahuta, Koroki's adopted son, who became one of Tainui's most famous leaders. Gordon Brown became friends with Mahuta after marrying Julia. His father was unusually progressive for the times. Before emigrating, he was friendly with Albert Namatjira, one of Australia's most famous artists. Dad used to say that poor bugger because he was the first Aborigine to be made an Australian citizen and his people hated him for it. Brown says they saw him as a black white man, and to the white man he was just a curiosity. At the Motueka home, the few books reflected Gordon's interest and his wife's culture. There were 3 Maori books, one on Maori art, one on Maori warfare, and one on Maori history. I always thought they were Mum's books, but Dad told me that when he got to know Mum, he decided to acquaint himself with the culture. I always rated him for that. The Tainui Kingitanga influence was important in Brown's upbringing, especially with te reo. The rule in his Mother's Day, he says, was no Maori to be spoken at school, but only Maori to be spoken at home. Mum used to talk about Princess Te Puia's stick. She ruled the roost in Tainui, and we were Kingitanga, and the absolute golden rule was you speak Pākehā at school and Maori at home. If Te Puia heard you speaking Pākehā on the marae, she would hit you with a stick. Brown didn't take to te reo as a child, despite his mother's best efforts and his father's understanding of the language. He was sent to Te Aute College for secondary schooling, where I was almost fluent for a while, but the only person I could really talk to after that was Mum. Turia Brown suffered a stroke in 1994, aged 49. There were other blows. Brown lost the use of one arm in a motorcycle accident when he was 21, and his younger sister Ariana died in a motorcycle accident in Thailand in 2016. His father died in 2001, aged 70, and his mother in 2012, aged 75. He attributes his life and career in books primarily to his father's influence. When I was a kid, I would spend as much time out of the house as I could. By Sunday afternoons, I was always naked, bored, and belligerent. When I was about 10, Dad stood in my bedroom doorway one day while I moaned and carried on and eventually banged through this big hardcover book at me, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. I read it, and he was right. It was cool. Tom Sawyer did all the things I did. His father upped the ante with the next book. He said, "You've got to read Huckleberry Finn because it's a totally different kind of novel." And I did. And there's Jim jumping off the page. The story of his acquaintance with Huckleberry Finn and the N word is relevant to Brown's current role. He has designed a couple of posters which will be launched next month to tempt young people into exploring challenging books, words, and poetry. One poster will simply read, "Keep reading, son. You will understand." His father's advice of 50 years ago is seared into Brown's memory. I saw the name Jim. I was 10. The only time I'd heard the N word that I could recall was there was a big dog called the road called Neep. So I said to Dad, "That's a funny name for a man." And he said, "Keep reading, son. You will understand." So this will be the poster for boys who don't want to read. The idea is you scan the QR code at the bottom of the poster and it's going to take you to an explanation of where that line comes from. He's critical of recent editions of Huckleberry Finn, where the N-word has been expurgated and the character appears simply as Jim or Jim the Slave. I know it's a terrible word. I know it is, laden with misery and prejudice and hatred and all that. But here's the thing. If a middle-class little white girl in the Midwestern states in America in 5 years' time reads the book, she's going to think they didn't have it so bad. They weren't calling him the N or anything. He had some dignity. He's just Jim. He discusses the N-word with all the students during the school visits. He wants them to know the truth and power of words. The first time I dropped it was at the lovely school in Auckland. I spoke in the chapel and told the story, and the kids got really into it. I said, "What do you think about that? I have a personal opinion, but I'm not going to share it with you. I want to know what you think." And it was a really good discussion. The teachers got into it. I fully expected to be rebuked, but it hasn't happened yet. I'm very careful now how I choose to use the word. Brown is a featured speaker at various book festivals this year, including this weekend's Word Christchurch. He regularly visits schools and at home in Lyttelton is developing an online literacy tool for young people, especially Maori, to relate sounds to symbols and words. He's keeping the tool simple, clear, and relatable, and would like to develop it for inclusion in the curriculum to get children reading.